After my personal struggle with food left me sick and suicidal, I was struck with the realization that food alone can't fix us. So I set out to discover what could, and what I found changed everything. After coaching thousands of clients and interviewing the world's leading experts, I realized it was time to start a bigger conversation. What are you really hungry for?
It's great.
Ooh, good one.
What am I really hungry for?
I love that question.
It's time to discover what you're really hungry for. This episode is brought to you by the Institute of Transformational Nutrition. ITN offers the first and only personalized nutrition certification program that's backed by science and proven to get clients actual results and coaches actual income. If you're ready to be proud of what you do, feel like you matter, make a difference in someone's life, and actually get paid for it, then visit transformationalnutrition.com to take your first class toward your certification for free. There's a Japanese aesthetic called wabi-sabi. Wabi-sabi is the celebration of imperfections. Where some art forms have appreciated the notion of perfection in beauty, wabi-sabi celebrates the imperfect, the uneven, and the incomplete nature of most things. It's the idea that imperfections can be beautiful. Imperfections are what stand things apart from one another. When everything is perfect, then everything's the same, and that's pretty boring. Perfection, in my opinion, is totally boring and also overrated. Embracing imperfections can be a way to embrace the gorgeous nuances of a person or a thing, because everyone has imperfections. We are all imperfectly perfect. Think about a tree. There are few, if any, that I've ever seen, absolutely perfect trees out there. When we go out in nature, we look at the trees and we see that they're spindly, that they bend in odd directions, that they split and get stunted. Yet we look at them with understanding. We see why this might have happened. We understand why the tree might have bent a certain way to catch the light, or how a storm may have split a tree up the center. But it still finds a way to grow and flourish. Ram Dass said, "When you go out into the woods and you look at the trees, you see all these different trees. And some of them are bent, some of them are straight, and some of them are evergreens, and some of them are whatever. And you look at the tree and you allow it. You see why it is the way it is. You sort of understand that it didn't get enough light and so it turned that way. And you don't get all emotional about it, you just allow it. You appreciate the tree. The minute you get near humans, you lose all of that. And you're constantly saying you're to this or I'm to this. That judging mind comes in. And so I practice turning people into trees, which means appreciating them just the way they are. And that's the truth of the matter. We don't judge anything as harshly as we judge ourselves. We hide ourselves. We hide our flaws. We hide the things that we think we should be ashamed of because we think other people will reject us for it. But the funny thing is that other people are far more forgiving of you than you are of yourself. Other people can see through our flaws and see how they can be strengths. Others can embrace the whole of you rather than just seeing the flaws, because the imperfect whole is better than a perfect piece any day. And what we perceive as flaws are just projected fears. We're afraid that people won't accept us. In fact, we are downright terrified that people will reject us. But that fear is self-perpetuating. The more you fear that others will reject you because of your flaws, the more likely that is to come true. Yet the more that you believe that your flaws are strengths, the more that becomes your truth. It's all about embracing all of you and recognizing that you can be flawed and majestic at the same time. My guest this week, Renee Airya, knows all about turning your flaws into strength. Renee went through an incredibly difficult time when she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and the surgery to remove it left half of her face paralyzed. Against all odds, Renee was able to heal 60% of the function in her face when doctors told her that it was impossible. But what's even more remarkable is that Renee learned to embrace the very thing that made her feel vulnerable and see it as her strength. She learned how to flip her flaws into something miraculous by teaching other people to embrace the things that they see as flaws and learn to see them as their greatest strengths.
The first time I heard you speak, I resonated just so deeply with your story. I've heard everything, I've heard it all, I've seen it all, but you have this really special gift, this special story, and what you've been through and the way you've been able to come through it and turn it into something so much bigger. It's been so inspiring for me over the years. So for those who may not have heard your story, tell me about you. Tell me why we're talking about flipping your flaws.
Well, I think I'll just start off actually with why I think we're wanting to flip flaws is because I think it's one of the number one causes of suffering in humans. I really do. And we can go back to that, but for right now, I'll share my story, which is I came from a background of a lot of work. I mean, at age 14, I was working nearly full time. By the time I was 20, I had moved myself to California. I was working in corporate at the time. And I mean, really by the outside, Cynthia, and even in the inside too, because I wouldn't say that I was an unhappy person. Maybe I just didn't know myself, as much as I could, but I was 20, right? Still living a really beautiful life. And I decided to quit corporate. I all of a sudden got one of the aha moments as soon as someone introduced me to meditation. And I thought, wow, like there's something about this that feels right. It feels relieving. It feels peaceful. It feels quite counter from the way that I was showing up in the corporate world. And in fact, I got so swept up into that world of healing that I quit the corporate and decided to study healing arts full time.
Wow.
So I was obsessed. And I know that we know a lot of folks like this, and we have been folks like this in the past. The personal development books and, the certifications and the trainings and,
all day long.
Nutrition. I was certified in nutrition and Pilates and craniosacral, and this whole toolbox of different things. And I decided that I wanted to go into offering healing for other people. So during my 20s, I was working as a healing practitioner, and I was also part-time modeling as well. That was one of my passions for my whole life, growing up, even in small town Indiana. And I was also journaling every day. I picked up that practice in my early 20s because it was such a way for me to feel relieved and just to process my thoughts, get to know myself better. And then one day, Cynthia, as I was journaling, I get this really cryptic message in my journal. And I write in my own handwriting, "There's something really wrong with you and you are going to die." Wow. And I thought, oh my God, what? Okay, what is this? Am I just having a really off day? Why would I write something like that? To be honest with you, it was scary and shocking, but I was kind of scared of myself, for a minute, because I thought what, am I in this depression? And I really didn't know it. So after weeks of this, I thought, I really need to take care of myself. I need to go into the doctor, find out if something's going on. But here's the weird thing. I was going into doctors and I had nothing else to tell them other than I'm writing these messages in my journals. I didn't have any symptoms. I literally did not have any physical symptoms of anything. So of course, I'm getting, you're a hypochondriac.
Right.
Which, I don't blame the doctors for telling me that, because I'm doing tests. Nothing is coming back on the blood work, right, that's showing any sort of conclusions. I ended up going into a doctor and I cried when I was in his office. And it was a real heart to heart. And I said, listen, I know that I have no symptoms. I know this sounds crazy, but I think there's something going on in my brain. Can you help me just based on what I'm sharing with you around this? And he said, I think I do have a person to send you to. He was also working off of intuition, at this point as well.
Yeah.
And he sent me to the right doctor who ordered the right kind of MRI for me. I'd already had an MRI done, but it wasn't, the correct MRI. And I was laying in the machine, Cynthia, and I knew something was wrong. So I wasn't surprised when the next day I got a call from the doctor that said, you need to come in right away. So I went in by myself. I drove myself there in complete anxiety. I get there, I look at the doctor, and I can tell he's kind of like shaking a little bit. I was like, okay, damn, this is not very good. I go back and I look at the shiny light x-ray machine with an image of my brain and a huge tumor in my brain. Like, huge. Wow. I mean, to me, like, because the light, like shines through where the wound is in the MRI, which is very interesting that the light shines through, where the wound is. But at the time, I mean, I was just blinded by the size, of the tumor. And he said, you're going to have to go in and get emergency surgery for this. Like, this is a major life or death situation. Wow. So I would say in that moment, that was a huge crossroads for me. Like, wow, okay, I'm really looking at life or death at age 29 years old, right? And even though I knew it was one of the most dangerous forms of massive brain surgery, I was going to lose my hearing completely in one ear because they cut in, through the sides. So I knew that the nerve for hearing was going to be gone. Also knew that I was going to lose my balance nerve, on one side. So I knew coming out of surgery, I was going to have to deal with some stuff. Like my life really wasn't going to be the same. But I'm telling you, girl, I went into that surgery so surrendered. I braided my hair on one side where they shaved, the other side. I drew with marker because they had to take fat out of my stomach actually to put into my head. So I actually had 2 surgeries done at once. Wow. And I drew this with my marker. I wrote "sexy scar" here. And I went in with just like, so I was like, okay, if we're gonna do this, let's do this. I bought cards for the surgeons. I gave them gemstones. I thought this is gonna be a sacred process. Wow. And then
it didn't go so well.
Well, the next memory I have, after, because I go under the anesthesia. The next memory I have is like the dark corridor. And you would kind of see this sometimes on medical shows, on TV, where they're laying down. Yeah. And you see like the lights go by. Yeah. I really had that like real life experience. And I was I was like in and out of anesthesia. But my friend looked down at me and said, "I'm so sorry. Something went really wrong." And I heard that, but it was kind of like, it was like this faint thing, because I was going in and out. But I do remember in that moment, I kind of felt my heart stop, like, oh, wow, this isn't good. So I spent a couple days in the emergency care, and I got, wheeled up finally to my room where I would recover for a week. And the surgeon came in, who I'd become really good friends with throughout this process, and he wasn't smiling when he came in the room. And he said, Renee, I know it was a huge thing for you to go into brain surgery, and that was kind of like one crossroads, but I need to let you know, I know you don't know this right now, because I was laying in a hospital bed, obviously coming out of a massive procedure. The brain surgery was 12 hours, wow. So it was like I was out for a long time. And he said, if you feel your eye, you have an eye patch there. And I need to let you know that when we got in there to remove the tumor, it was so large that your facial nerve fell apart when we took out the tumor. And I was just kind of like, well, okay, exactly like, what does this mean? And he said, you can't move your face at all on one side. You can't smile. You can't move your eye. We're going to suggest that you go in for eye surgery because your eye's not producing moisture. A lot of information to take in after I thought, when I was gracefully going into this journey, this surgery, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to wake up on the other side of this with freedom. Yeah. Like, my body is going to heal. I'm finally going to be like rid of, whatever I was probably, carrying around in my subconscious, this like survival mode that I didn't even know about. It's going to be a fresh start. And so the news was very shocking for me, to say the least, when he tells me this. And I remember my mom was there, and I was like, oh my God, well, can I look in the mirror? Like what? And so it's it's a little bit emotional for me sharing this, because I had one of these, I guess the best language to put it in is transcendent moments. after he gave me this news. I kind of felt like somersaults, cartwheels and somersaults, inside of me.
Right.
This whole topsy-turvy inside, and out comes my mouth. I'm going to heal myself.
You said that.
This comes out of my mouth. I don't know if I said it or what said it or who said it.
It was said.
But it was said.
Wow.
I am going to heal myself, and I'm going to heal myself within 6 months. This comes out of my mouth. So you can imagine I'm having one of these moments where I'm shocking my own self as it's coming out of my mouth. But something was so convincing about this voice that came out that it kind of woke me up. Like I saw where I could have turned to the other side and turned into a lot of despair and a lot of suffering. But the voice came out and it kind of made me look in this other direction, this direction of solutions, this direction of, okay, well, if that is so, how are we going to live over the next 6 months so that we make that be the most probable outcome?
Did they give you odds? Like you have, like the odds are 1 in 100, 1 in 10 that the nerve would grow back?
They didn't give me odds, but I can tell you that there was less than a 1% chance that the facial nerve would have been that injured, that my face would have been 100% paralyzed on one side. So that's the only real statistic that I know. But what I do know for sure is that my facial nerve was not connected together. So what I had in front of me was, okay, this facial nerve needs to grow back together again in order for my face to move.
I can't imagine what that would feel like. I can't even imagine. And I don't know that anyone could until you're in that situation.
I could not have imagined either.
But you immediately are determined that, no, this is not my destiny. This is not what's going to happen. Not only am I going to heal, but I'm going to do it in 6 months. You immediately made that decision from whatever place, right? So then what did you do? Did you rely on all the training that you had from nutrition and healing and all of those things? Or what happened next?
I kind of took my experience with meditation and then also the physical way that our body is laid out. And I did a lot of intentional visualization, a lot of communication with my body. I mean, of course, healthy eating, the fish oils, all the things that you really, really need just on a foundational level when you're healing something like that.
Right.
But I've got to tell you, and people ask me this a lot, about my story. And I think a lot of people really want to hear it was because I visualized every day.
Right.
Or, yes, it was because of that. And I worked really, really hard. I got in front of the mirror every single day. It is not easy looking at yourself. Here's the thing, Cynthia. When your face is completely paralyzed on one side, you lose the historical record of what your life has been. I had no wrinkles. I had no expression. It was nothing. So if I looked at this side of myself, I remembered who I was based on my past, based on, I might have this line or this wrinkle, because I had the best day of my life, with so-and-so, but I would look at this side and nothing was there. So it was not easy to take consistent action every day, but I knew if I didn't take those things that I was working on in the spiritual world and really give them that access point, by working hard and being like fierce and determined, probably nothing would happen. So every day, got in front of that mirror, willed my face to move. I took photos of the left-hand side of my face, would superimpose them over the right side of my face. It was, it was hard work, but it was intentional and it was determined work. And I'll tell you what, I just watched my smile line little by little come back. And then, over a period of time, it was actually a couple months, it happened very quickly, about 60% of the function returned to that side, which really was considered a medical miracle. I called my doctors and I was like, here it is. And they brought me in for an MRI. And they called me a couple days after the MRI and said, this is very, very rare. We can actually see your facial nerve on the MRI, which in and of itself, I guess, is not very typical, but they said it has indeed started growing back together.
Wow. That's unbelievable. For people who are faced with these obstacles and didn't have the background that you have, didn't have the education and the training, which, by the way, I think life prepares us for what's coming next. I'm a firm believer in that. But for not having that, for people who don't have that, where do we get the courage? Where do we find that determination? How do we say, no, this is not going to be my destiny? Yes, this is what's happened, but I'm choosing to change this. Where does that strength come from, Renee?
I believe that the strength comes from your spirit and that it comes from your character. And when I say spirit, I'm not actually referencing some spiritual out there universe. Like I mean spirit in a very grounded sense that, your spirit is your character. It's your set of values.
Okay.
I do feel that it could be extremely difficult for a person to navigate themselves through intense and chaotic situations without choosing to be connected to a value that they want to be expressing, because otherwise we're blowing in the wind, we're just completely in the dark. So for me, I don't necessarily see it so much as courage as I see it asking the question, who do I want to be through this circumstance that I'm going through? Really, that is the freedom. Wow. That's the thing that we do have the ability to control. Yeah. Who and how am I going to be throughout this circumstance, throughout these things that are happening in my life? The ones that I can control and the ones that I can't control.
But
how am I going to still be the character? Exactly. Yeah. And I think, this might help in kind of putting this into context. So, it was this big surge of energy that came through because obviously more or less kind of a miracle happened. I got to experience and be a part of a miracle. But I wasn't the same Renee that I was when I went into that surgery.
How were you different on the other side?
Cynthia had an amazing smile, big. Like I wasn't like really a makeup, where like my smile totally stood out. In fact, like the week before I went into surgery, I remember this man walking up to me at Trader Joe's and he said, I just have to tell you that your smile is infectious. So for me, even though I had, this 60% comeback, it doesn't move, all the way over here. I didn't have the same smile. So what happened for a period of time, even though I may have not fully gone into the darkness, whenever the doctor told me, you're not going to use half of your face again, I'll tell you when I went into the darkness is when I realized I wasn't going to be my old self. Maybe I had this miracle healing happen, but I was still comparing myself to my old self. And I knew that I wasn't being fully loving of myself. I knew that I wasn't being fully authentic with myself because I knew that I felt so much shame because I was comparing myself to my past self. So I had this real heart-to-heart conversation with myself and just said, okay, do you want to feel this way for the rest of your life? Because here's the thing, right now I'm 41 years old. I'm going to be 60 at some point in time. I'm not going to look the way that I look right now. I knew that I would be setting myself up for a lifetime of feeling unsuccessful if I couldn't really do something about connecting with my character through that part of my healing process. Because I had transformed, but the transformation was not going to be 100% of what I was before. So I gave myself a major challenge and said, you know what? I'm just going to start sharing my flaw with people around me. That thing that I don't want people to look at,
Yeah.
the thing that I really don't want to talk about, that's what I'm going to talk about.
Wow.
I'm going to straight up go into a conversation with people and say, so, this is my story and this isn't defining me, but this is physically, the experience that I had. And, now I have like a crooked smile and now my face or my eye does some funky things on this side. And you know what happened? I would tell the story and people would start crying. They would start tearing up and they would say, oh my gosh, I have, a leg that is shorter on this side. Or, you know what, Renee? It's so cool that you would take the time to share this because I actually have addictions that I have been hiding from other people. A whole myriad of fears. I mean, I believe now that flaws are just projected fears, right?
Flaws
are
projected fears.
Flaws are projected
Wow,
fears.
that's powerful.
Is that the first step? Is just saying like, look, this is me, like sharing that story, sharing your flaw?
I think the first step is really embracing that to be human is to be humble.
Say it again.
Yeah, to be human is to be humble.
Wow.
We come here with all the rest of our brothers and sisters who are all here on the same path of being humble humans. We all are. I mean, that's our commonality. That is our similarity, is that we are on this path of being humans, remembering ourselves,
Right.
over and over again.
Yes.
So could it possibly be, just possibly be, that our flaws and the things that make us different from everyone else are some of the reasons why we came here to play and to be different and to be unique expressions and to see ourselves in these quirks? Because if we're all here having the similar human journey, how are we gonna know each other? We can't all be the same on this planet. You're very much different than I am. And I love you and you teach me so much about myself because you have different quirks and you have different life experiences and you have different ways of interpreting things, right?
I get that. I do. And I feel like, I don't know, for me, I just feel like by definition, humans are flawed.
Yes, exactly.
We just are. And isn't that why we're
Absolutely.
here? It's funny. I tell the story sometimes, like when I was going through my own struggle of like, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. And coming to this realization of how am I going to get myself out of that. It was that, very human feeling. And I thought coming out of that, Renee, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just become enlightened.
Yes.
I'm just going to read all these
that's very
self-help
common.
books and I'm just going to study it and then I'm going to be enlightened and I'm going to know it all and then like everything will be fine. And I can just let go of this and get on with my life, only I'll be smarter, wiser, better, happier, all of these things, right?
And how far that gets you?
I am still trying to get there, girl. Because you know what happens is you start down that road, and I think it's like the joke that the universe plays on us. It's like once you start down that path, you can't unknow. Once you know, you can't unknow. And then I realized this is it. This is life. There is no enlightenment. Enlightenment's so overrated. It's about the journey, right? And there's just always something else. There's always a new path. There's always a new challenge or a new opportunity, if I could reframe that. So accepting these flaws and not trying to hide them, but maybe sharing them and sharing the wisdom that they've given us.
Yes.
If we can come together and do that.
I love to have people just do a really, really simple exercise.
Oh, tell me.
Which first,
Tell me what it is.
so it's a question, asking exercise. And number one is, what is my biggest flaw? Or what do you consider to be your biggest flaw? And people even can get a little, triggered with that first question.
I felt
and
that.
kind of not know and okay, well, what does that mean?
Yes.
Well, first of all, flaws are invisible, visible character defects, addictions, or fears, like I mentioned before.
So not necessarily physical, not spiritual. It could
exactly,
be anything.
Exactly. And if you just ask the question and just let it land inside, what do I believe is my biggest flaw? Something will come, and you'll really know when you have it.
Yeah.
when you don't want anyone else to know about it.
Mine came immediately.
Yeah.
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 Tell me step 2, because
okay.
I got to get past step 1. I got to keep going.
Yeah. So step 2 is, how do I hide that flaw?
You mean
How
on
do I hide
purpose?
it?
Like how can we
do I
tuck it
hide
away?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
right
yeah.
now I want to hide it. I don't
You
want to tell anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've got maybe for some people, it might be, wrinkles on the face. It might be that you are not actually in love with your spouse anymore, but to everyone else around you, you pretend that you have a wonderful marriage. So there are multiple different ways that can show up. The third one is actually my favorite question out of all of them because it's so insightful. How do I feel when I hide my flaw? How do I feel when I hide my flaw? That one, Cynthia, that one really gets to the root of the emotion that we most identify within ourselves that holds us back from truly living in our greatness. So you see that one has such a soulful and such an emotional quality to it.
Yeah.
So for me, that one actually kind of precedes, the result of step number 3 kind of precedes, question number 1 and number 2. And the last one is, what could be the possible message or gift in this flaw? And really inquire in that. Don't think that your mind will automatically know or answer it with, something that you think is a really smart answer, like, I was given this so that I can become a teacher and I can teach other people how to get through this. And that really might be the true answer sometimes. But let yourself be really curious for the real truth that wants to unfold. What could be the gift or the message inside of my flaw?
Wow. And then once we have that and we know what that is, then what?
I suggest creating a conversation with someone around it. Another person who you really trust, who you know that you can have an empowering conversation with, and just ask, would you be a witness to this couple-minute process for me? I have done this in group experiences when I have spoken, and I've got to tell you, the people listening to the sharing generally have huge breakthroughs because, like you said earlier, right? When we hear someone else share at that level, we become liberated.
Yeah. And that's flipping your flaw.
It is. Well, and because it's not, the name in and of itself, I think, can be a little bit deceiving because flipping your flaw is not about living as an unflawed person.
Right.
It's about flipping the definition of a flaw. A flaw means a defect or a blemish. Can you tell me who might feel good about themselves if they feel defected or blemished?
Not very many people.
No, you're not going to feel good about it.
I love that. I love you. Thank you so much for this, just this insight and for, being, again, so brave and for going through that, because now we have you to share this experience with others and inspire them. You inspire me. I can't imagine there's not anyone that has heard that story that isn't inspired by you. So thank you for having that experience and seeing it in the way that you see it and then sharing that message. It's, I'm in awe of you.
Welcome.
I truly am.
Thank you.
So Renee,
I'm in awe of all humans. It's just such a juicy experience.
It really is. Juicy. I like
really
that word.
Is. I'm not going to say easy, but it's worth it.
Messy.
It's very worth it.
I think it's messy. It's being
messy.
A human.
It's messy, beautiful, mysterious.
It is.
And it's okay.
And it's perfect.
It's okay.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
Renee, the name of the show is What You're Really Hungry For.
Yes.
So tell me, what are you really hungry for?
I'm really hungry for vacation.
Thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
You
Thank
are,
you,
again,
Cynthia.
truly a light in the world. So thank you for your message. And thank you for being you, Renee, truly. This week is all about learning to turn your vulnerability, your flaws, if you will, into your greatest strengths. So I invite you to choose one of Renee's tips that she discussed during our show and start implementing it in your life today. What can you do to identify with and stop hiding your flaws? Don't wait another day or even another hour. Start to embrace your flaws today.
As always, the conversation continues at cynthiapasquella.com. Head on over and leave a comment below this video telling me the one thing that you will do to see the strength in your flaws today.
Did you like this video? If so, please subscribe and then share it with your friends. And if you want to hear more from me, including things that I only share in email, then head on over to cynthiapasquella.com and sign up for my email newsletter so you can become a part of this beautiful community of women who are discovering what they're really hungry for. On next week's episode of What You're Really Hungry For.
From the time I was a little girl, I felt things at a really deep level. I felt energy, and I grew up and I realized that people didn't feel what I felt. So I felt different. And when I was about 5 or 6, after, several years, I started to dim that. I didn't want to feel those things. I didn't want to experience things that other people weren't experiencing.
Right.
I just wanted to be like other people.
The Institute of Transformational Nutrition offers the first and only personalized nutrition certification program that's backed by science and proven to get clients actual results and coaches actual income. If you're ready to be proud of what you do, feel like you matter, make a difference in someone's life, and actually get paid for it, then visit transformationalnutrition.com to take your first class toward your certification for free.